Hello and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. So I'm joined by Matty B. I just noticed the two internet. So Brattin is joining us. We're going to be talking about basically the pros and the cons of getting an analytics job. So Matty B, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be invited back. This is exciting.
Well, I figured you had a unique perspective on this because you said you've built out 2 or 3 analytics teams.
Yeah. Yep.
So because what I'm doing now is, I'm spending all summer launching this platform, but I'm taking on coaching clients instead of consulting clients. And I had someone I'm helping transition into this space they had like a meltdown.
Oh boy.
Well, okay. So I wanted to ask you, so one thing that she's frustrated with is that she just got a new job in this space and there's no onboarding process. And one thing that I kind of came out in the conversation was like, well, there's no onboarding process for problems that they don't even know they have yet. Okay. So, and I'm realizing that I'm not an analytics manager, so maybe I need to check in with someone like you before I start giving out that kind of advice. So what's a good or a bad onboarding process in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a reaction to that, which is to say that I think there are companies who do onboarding well in the universe for employees in general, not just analytics professionals. If a company has a good onboarding process, a good orientation process, then they set you up with your management and they introduce you to people. And then they kind of ease you into the work. You've got people to shadow. Those are all typical things that you see in a good onboarding process. Most companies don't have a good onboarding process, full stop. Okay. So analytics is no exception. I just want to make that very clear. Now, analytics, this may or may not be accurate, but this is what I've seen, tends to have a less pleasant onboarding process than a lot of other people who are getting into different fields might have, because it's such a complex thing where suddenly you've got a lot of people interested in what you're doing, how you can help them, and you're just trying to get your bearings, feeling yourself around this dark room. You don't even know what's going on. So if there's no onboarding for an analyst, it compounds the issue and it promotes anxiety, imposter syndrome, all of these things that we hear about. Well, onboarding can help mitigate that if it's done properly. Okay.
Good. Okay. That was a much more thorough answer. And the person I'm coaching, I want to say, hey, go watch this live stream from someone you've built multiple teams. So you've gone through this multiple times. But okay. So what we're going to be talking about in this episode are the pros and the cons. And I feel like we've just kind of hinted at the biggest con, in my opinion, is the level of uncertainty in this space. Yeah. Number one, it's a new industry. And number two, it's a relatively high paying job and you don't get paid high amounts of money to solve easy or known problems.
That's often not the case. Sometimes you might get lucky and have some low hanging fruit that you can go pick and impress people right off the bat. That's one of the things that I like to promote individuals do, is figure out what those low hanging fruit items are, because to you, it may not sound like a big deal, but to somebody in marketing or HR or any department that you support, they may have this nagging issue that they just don't have the time, wherewithal, or you name it, to solve that issue. You can come in and put your energy into it real quick and solve it for them, and suddenly you're the hero, and it was no sweat for you. So I think we also have this perspective, a lot of folks who get in with the technical skills and the basic acumen, if you're able to put all that energy into what looks like a basic issue, you can still make an impact quickly. And then that's going to compound as you build that rapport, build that trust, and really start to carve your place out in the organization.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to be doing something a little bit differently in this live stream I'm kind of beta testing this new approach of, I'm thinking my next semester case studies and business analytics course, I'm going to do half of the classes as a live stream. So this is going to be like a little experiment of, I put together some slides, and basically this is going to be a lecture on I carved out a specific persona, and we're going to walk through what it's like transitioning. And so it's going to get really, really concrete. So we're going to be setting the scene here, and let's pivot into our slide deck. All right, so this is called A Tale of Two Careers. And the question here is to transition or not to transition. Also, Matt, can you put in headphones? I think I'm hearing myself on a feedback loop.
Oh boy. Well,
so it just kind of trips me up to talk. I don't know if you've ever had one of those machines. So here's what's on the agenda for this slide deck is we're going to introduce the persona, set the stage for the analysis, and then we've created this financial model of what it would be like to have either the person stay in their same career path or pivot to another one. So Gabriel Diaz, which is totally, I'm making fun of myself because I think the last live stream I called Abe Gabe. So I think he's actually in here. So, yep, Abe's here. And, so he says, hey, everybody, I'm coming live to you for my new job as a financial analyst. Okay, that's awesome that you mentioned financial analysis because we're going to be looking at a few salary guides a little bit later on. All right. So here's the fake persona here, which is Gabriel Diaz. We're going to call him Gabe in this use case. So he's a 10th grade science teacher. He's curious about math and science. So he might be curious about this specific area of expertise, but he's understimulated in his current role. So he's just he's not growing. He's not being challenged. And I don't want this to sound like I'm totally besmirching teaching. I think it's a fantastic profession. But he is currently debating a transition into the space of analytics. So what are the pros of his current position? And I actually wanted to pause here, Matt, and have you chime in. What do you think? What are the benefits of being a teacher?
Oh, there's tons. And I think this definitely depends on the individual. And I will say anecdotally that it's funny that this is the caricature that we're going after here. In the reason being that I've had more than one teacher reach out to me over the past year and set up coffee to sit and talk about what it would look like to transition from teaching to an analytical role. And so I think this is not an uncommon thing. These are people who are, particularly if they're a teacher in the STEM space, they got those credentials, they got into that role, and they have a passion for information and sharing information, and they look at things differently. They're passionate about it. So in that, they probably feel like, okay, this is awesome. I can teach this future generation. I could also be, helping an organization, solve big problems or do other things. And so depending on what their ultimate direction they feel where they're being pulled, some may be completely satisfied in their role as a teacher. And I think that's fantastic. Some may think, this isn't necessarily for me. What else is out there? And then they stumble into analytics. So I think that the pros of being a teacher, you get to deal with difficult people. Humans are difficult. They can be. They're unpredictable. Students are 100% no exception. They might actually be the rule. You're going to encounter difficult students. You're trying to communicate complex issues to them that could be the first time they're learning about them, and you want them to absorb that information. That's kind of the life of an analyst, is trying to share complex issues with a consumer, a stakeholder who needs to understand that. And they reached out to you because that's what they do. So I think there's a lot of parallels actually between teaching and analytics for sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. On the flip side of that, these are the two that I kind of carved out that seem immediately obvious to me. So you have job security. So there are high schools in every single county in every single state in the United States. So if you lose one job, you can go to another one. Like there's always a demand for it. And like you touched on, it's high meaning high impact. if you're one of those teachers that loves to go above and beyond, you might change someone's life. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like you kind of summed up the pros, but with this security is some downside. So the cons, in my perspective, is that it has low salary and low potential growth. And that's the trade-off. And I think there's an underlying kind of value structure going on here. So if you value stability, security, and you don't mind sacrificing, some income potential over the long haul, this is a good path for you. You could potentially go up into, I guess what's the management structure within high school education? Principal, vice principal?
Well, yeah, there's administrative tiers. There's lots of things that you can do. And, getting to principal level is actually a pretty big deal. You've got to work through other ranks, but you start to become, you assist with other teachers, you start to take on more responsibility and different types of coordinating roles, and then you move up from there. But those opportunities, speaking of, the stability, people who do work themselves up, they're not in a hurry to leave those roles because they do start to get more and more comfortable.
Right. Well, okay. So I guess the point that I'm trying to drive at here with the growth potential point is that you can go above and beyond for years and years and years and never get recognition financially. And I think it's hard to tie back. Well, number one, there's only so many principal spots, but then also two, it's not as tangible tying back your impact to a dollar amount, to where within the analytics space, if you have a track record of success, you can, and if you're good at the soft skills and can tie and kind of frame up and tie back your work to a dollar amount, you can leverage that to grow. And there seems to be a huge amount of opportunity. So here's the risk and the reward, in my opinion, from pivoting into the analytics space. So the reward is one of the biggest rewards is money. So you have so much earning potential within this space compared to a lot of other roles and other spaces. But also too, it seems, and it's funny because I'm now going to turn my risk into a reward here. You're also stimulated. So you're going to be taking on new problems that you don't know how to solve, and it's going to push you a little bit. Now, the downside of that is that, like this coaching client I've had, if too much of that uncertainty hits you all at once, you might get overwhelmed and you might have some sleepless nights. It might really push you far beyond your comfort zone, which I guess we could talk a little bit about. Matt, how have you ever been overwhelmed within like where you're at within your career, or like progressing to where you're at? And how do you cope with that? Do you have any strategies on that?
Have I ever been overwhelmed in my career?
I'm talking about paralyzed, like you can't.
Like paralyzed with fear. I think the worst of it has been when I've gone out on my own, when I started a CPA firm, and that's a whole other conversation. I would say that there have been times where, you become emotionally invested so severely in achieving specific goals. And then when things don't look like they're going in your direction, you go through the stages of grief, right? So if I would say that there were situations where I pegged a goal for myself I let my family know I am going to be generally focused on my career for the next year. And here's the rewards that we could potentially see if we do that, and getting the support, the buy-in, and then busting my butt for a year. And then the result was getting the worst performance review of my life, right? Mm. That happened. And it was a definite, like, what am I doing with my life situation where, like, is it me? Is it the company? Why was I good before? And now that I made an effort, I'm not. Like, what's going on? So it was paralyzing. But once you kind of get through those states, you have to let yourself really process that. And it's important to answer those questions for yourself. Like, okay, do I still like the work? Yes or no? Yes, I do. I'm passionate about this. I'm invested in my future in this career field. Of course I do. This doesn't change anything. Okay. Do I acknowledge the things that the feedback I got? Is there sense in it? Can I honestly say I can't learn from that? There are certain things I can take away from that for sure. Okay, let's just be honest with yourself. If you're going to grow from something, this is something to grow from. And then basically from there going, I like this. I got some feedback. Do I want to keep playing the game? Yes or no? Yes, I do. Okay, well then, if I think that there's nothing for me in this current role, then I got to find something else. And that's what I did. I ended up getting a promotion out of that, from a worse review to a promotion in a different area of the business. And I was able to just continue that trajectory upward. And it's a matter of calming yourself and going through those, allowing yourself to go through those stages and not letting it absorb you or consume you to the point that you're like, I suck. This is a sign I should just, quit and go do something else. No, if you're seriously passionate about it, you're going to find a way.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're on here to kind of, I can bounce ideas off of you. Cause yeah, I was a little bit stuck of like how to help someone. Well, okay. So what was going on? Did you have, this was later on in your career when that happened? Like this wasn't like entry level? No, it was early on?
This was between senior and manager level. So I was probably about 5 years into my career.
Okay.
So first third.
Interesting. So, okay. What was your trajectory from entry level to senior to management? What did that look like?
So I made the transition from, I'll call it junior to proper analyst by way of getting my master's. So got my MBA, and then I got into a role as an analyst, and then I got my senior after a year and a half of putting in the work and growing. So what was the trajectory like? Is that what you're asking, or it?
Okay. Well, so part of the reason, the motivation behind putting together this lecture for this live stream is that what I feel like I just uncovered with this coaching call is that it is a pretty jarring jump to go from science teacher to business analyst. Because what I'm seeing is a lot, like you talked about, is that imposter syndrome of, especially if you've been in that job where you're comfy, like you're not like being a teacher. It's like you have your class. I mean, a lot of times the art. Well, I think I'm kind of the exception here in that the only classes that I've taught, except for the Excel class, I got to create myself. So there's a lesson plan. Everything is mapped out. I mean, the kids are a bit of a question, like you said, but I mean, ultimately you can just say, hey, go to the principal's office. So like there's a whole lot, like there is uncertainty, but it's contained to where what I'm seeing is this person's gone from basically not being challenged for the last 3 years and being frustrated with that to all of a sudden the new problem set is, oh my God, I have all of these problems and I don't know if I can get over that. I don't know if maybe I should just go back to that comfortable place before. And actually it's funny you bring up education, because she was wondering to me out loud, like, should I go back and get a master's degree? And that way I'm exposed to these concepts instead of like, she's drinking through a fire hose right now.
Yeah. No, and that is the statement that we often use for new hires. Again, it's not specific to analytics, but definitely the case. And it sucks, but it's totally normal to get into a new role and just everything is shiny and new and crazy and you don't understand any of it. And I don't know what the expectation was going in. But assuming that this is not a terrible organization, they hired you for a reason. They made that decision to bring you on board. They're invested in your success. They don't want to see you fail. So I think vocalizing concerns is paramount. Like being confident enough to have these discussions and saying, look, I need direction. And this is something I talk a little bit about being on Reddit, sometimes the analytics subforums and things. And one of the most common things I see people asking is like, hey, I'm the first analyst to get hired in this organization and they don't know what to do with me. Is this normal? It's like, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people hire analysts and they're just like, go analyze stuff. And they don't really necessarily know what it is. So you got to forge that path or figure out what are the things that you should focus on. So being vocal, saying, look, I'm not sure what the priority should be for me, but I've got all these spinning plates. They're all crashing around me, or I don't even know what plates to pick up. So give me a little bit of direction where you want me to start looking, because the concept of multitasking, particularly in the analytical space, is just complete garbage. You can't be analyzing 15 different things at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. You got to get down and in the weeds sometimes, and you can't be in the weeds in multiple avenues. So there's got to be an understanding that you're dealing with a new person who's new to the organization, probably new to the industry. They don't necessarily know all the big questions. So they should, if this hasn't already happened, sit down with the key stakeholders and have a 30-minute conversation about, what do you do today? What do you look at today? What would you like to look at? What questions do you have? And just make those lists. Don't make any promises, but compile that and then take it back to your manager and say, look, these are the things that came up. Do any of these look interesting to you that you think I should pursue? And then you're focused. Then you've got that one thing that you're going to try to hit a home run on, and it's still going to suck. It's still going to be ambiguous. You have to be able to be comfortable dealing with ambiguity in this role.
Yeah. Okay. Multiple threads here. So,
sorry, I talked a lot.
No. I mean, my mind, because what's funny is like I do this often, and I think it might be like I solve problems through. Well, I'm just an extrovert, so I like talk through these problems. So with a well-defined, like, teaching is a profession that has pretty much been like, there's like, here's your folder, here's got every step, everything's laid out to where it's got a frame around it. So it's like, you the first day, here's your syllabus, here's the contract of the students, like, here's your grade. Everything is extremely mapped out. But if you're the first hire as an analyst for some organization, they don't even know what they don't know at this point. And then, so instead of being like being at these lower paying jobs, you are essentially dictated to. They say, all right, you show up at this time, here's your parking pass, here's what you get paid, here's how much paid time you get off. Everything is very, very formatted to where that is a far cry from, well, being a remote analyst that's like an early hire. I mean, I'm starting to like wrap my mind around it, and I'm glad I'm doing these coaching calls, because they're almost like customer interviews for the platform of like, what are the actual challenges in making those transitions. Okay, I want to pivot into, I think there's imposter syndrome going on. And I think that there is a untold, or like I've never even heard anyone talk about the risk of staying at these lower paying jobs, and that you are buying into a premise that this is how much my time is worth. And I think if you work that for each additional year you work that, the harder it is to bump that and say, I'm worth more. I can solve more complex problems. And it's hard not to internalize that I'm a teacher, and this is what it's fair to expect for me to get paid. Because I wanted to jump into this financial model that we have been carving out, and I think it's it's a rough model right now, but I've made some adjustments to it. But all right, so getting back to Gabe, and I'm trying to loop a specific narrative into this, which I'm realizing it's hard to talk to you, narrate this lecture, and sorry guys in the chat, I feel like I have been ignoring you. So I don't know if I can do chat and a lecture at the same time. Although, Hunter, maybe can you help facilitate that a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, hey, Hunter.
Can you guys hear me okay, by the way? I've been having some mic issues today.
Well, somebody was late to the call.
1 minute. I was 1 minute late, everybody.
But no, so I just added you into the stream, so we couldn't hear you until just now.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
No, you're good.
But yeah, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed trying to like tell the story, engage with you, Matt, and then also the chat. So Hunter, if you want to pull in, well, I've got to pull in the specific questions. So I guess we'll have like a break for chats. So let's talk about this financial model. So
Okay.
Matt, I think this is fairly reasonable for a teacher salary. Like I looked it up in North Carolina. I think this is 36,000 is roughly where they start. And I did a 3% salary increase. I think which I looked up was pretty much standard. So they go along. So Gabe, if you were to stay as a 10th grade science teacher, he would get a promotion at year 5. So maybe he would become the department, I don't know, manager, which would be that first increase is a 10% increase in salary. Then another 5 years, he gets a 12% increase. So I think we can mess around with these numbers if you want, but I feel like, does that seem fair from a 10-year financial model?
Yeah, I think the biggest caveat to put on any and all of this is there's so many considerations that need to be taken into account when you're discussing salary in any shape or form, right? There's high cost of living, low cost of living, big cities, small cities, different companies, different resources. So I think everybody should be, if you're looking at this right now, you should be taking this with some grain of salt. It's not going to be accurate. It's not going to fit everybody's perspective, but passing the sniff test or the reasonableness test, I would say, sure, that's not unreasonable.
Right. So staying at that stable job, I mean, you can see I built out a very simple Excel chart. You can see the earning potential is just capped over a 10-year period. It's just not super high. But if you were to pivot into this analytics space, which, I mean, one of my coaching clients just got a job that's paying this high out of the gate, and that's her first entry level job. So I think that's pretty fair from my perspective. And just to be honest with everyone, or to keep me honest, we're going to be looking at the Robert Half salary guide and then also the Harnum salary guides. So just to kind of get like a read on if you're watching this stream and you're entry level or even senior level, how does this map up with what other people are getting paid? So that same with the analytics. So timeline 2, the analytics job. So starts out at 52, gets that 3% raise. And then promotion 1 is a 15% raise. Matt, do you think that's so within your analytics teams that you've built out? I mean, how much, like if you were to promote someone from entry to, I guess there's no mid-level. So it goes from entry to senior level and then management, right?
It depends on the company, right? So you could have some structures that I've seen in better organized companies who are farther along the data maturity curve and actually had a good process. They've got people who come in with an undergrad degree, no work experience. They're going to be at that junior level. And then after a couple of years, they might make analyst, like proper. Typically, they would hold senior levels to master's students or people who've been in the game for quite a while. And so all that to say that sort of a bump, if you've got three to 4 years of entry level experience, I think that's reasonable. It could be a supervisor. It could just be a stamp. And now you're sort of specializing as a proper analyst. I think that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. And the point that I wanted to make from like kind of the color coding perspective is that there is opportunity for you to move up and get promotions. I mean, I feel like if people getting promoted every 3 years, I mean, I guess the longer you get into your career, the harder it is. Like once you go from senior to management, it's harder to go from management to VP and then VP to, C-suite level. So I think within the first 10 years, this is fairly reasonable. But what I wanted to point out is that after a 10-year time period, it's almost double the salary there. So that is one of the biggest pros of of getting an analytics job. And you can see this over the timeline. All right, Hunter, do we have any viewers submitted questions?
We've got one question so far from Think Mark Think, and it says, does it make sense to get a master's in analytics with no prior work experience in the field? Wouldn't you still start from ground zero?
Man, they are predicting the flow of this conversation. So I have actually been doing an in-person meetup with people local. So on Monday night, I got dinner and drinks with Dr. Hall, Molly Welsh, Ryan Forrest, and Raj Sigdel. So if you guys are local to the Greensboro area, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can start meeting up more in person. But what came out of that conversation or that kind of get together was that it was me and Ryan who are entrepreneurs versus Dr. Hall and Raj who are academics. And Dr. Hall casually said he thinks it's a smart idea to do exactly that, to go directly from undergrad to grad school. Okay.
Respectfully disagree.
I respectfully cannot afford it, so that's all I'm saying.
Okay. So what's funny is I asked Dr. Hall to come on to debate his point. So I'm going to have to be the devil's advocate and disagree with myself and argue on his behalf, because he did bring up some valid points. So if we head back over to the financial model, I just wanted to illustrate his point. So if you see this box right here, I'm calling this the education multiplier. So his argument is that if you get all of your education done right out of the chute, what's going to happen is you're going to have a steeper salary curve. So let's say that this goes from, instead of doing 100% of this model, let's do 120. So then you can see that's a much steeper. Promotions come quicker because you're seen in a different light. But Matt, I want to hear your perspective on this.
The value of any master's program, and I'm trying to, throughout this conversation, make it more generally applicable, even though I understand the audience here is probably going to be data people. But I think this goes for a lot of fields. A lot of people reach that fuzzy point in their career where they're like, man, I don't like what I'm doing, or man, I feel like I need to try, often in their education, where they're like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, or I don't know if I'm ready to work. What am I going to do? I'm just going to get a master's. That is hopefully the exception, but it's unfortunately what I hear a lot. If the power of a master's degree is in the relationships, it's in the cohort, you're only as strong as your weakest link in your cohort. You all learn from each other. It's not just about the person behind the podium at the front of the room. It's about those people that you're talking to who are posing questions, who bring that real life experience to the table so that you can debate textbook ideas, right? So I think a lot of people who go straight through undergrad and go straight to a master's, you're going to get heavily discounted in your first role coming out. People are going to see you and think like, oh, they're on paper kind of overqualified, and we're not going to pay them for that because they don't have the experience to back it up. They just have a piece of paper. I don't know if this person can do it. I don't know if they're actually a dedicated employee. Maybe they're going to go get their PhD. So there's a lot of question marks. So I can't imagine a person coming out competing with an undergrad versus a master's, and the master's actually getting paid significantly more than the undergrad, because guess what? They both bring equally zero experience, right? And they want someone who can get in and ramp up. They might have better book smarts or evidence that they've done this learning, but that doesn't necessarily translate into the real world all the time. So it's just it's a big gamble, because here's the thing. If you can come out, kick butt after your undergrad, establish yourself, go, yes, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I see where your eyes are open. You see the trajectories that you could pursue. You see what people have credential wise that are doing those things. And you go, okay, I want to do that, and that's the degree I need. Then you go and you pursue that. It becomes part of your big plan. I think if you're just in education and you step into another educational role, you don't necessarily see all the paths that are available. And it's just that line, I think it might start a little bit higher, and I think it's going to be similarly flat, because if you stop at 3 to 5 years and you get like a master's, you're going to see a big step up because it's going to be valued on top of your experience. Whereas a master's, look, there's always going to be exceptions. I just haven't seen this in other people.
Okay. So this is not even my argument, but this is a fair argument that Dr. Hall raised over drinks on Monday. The longer you go without getting a master's degree, the lower the chance. So you may find yourself in a position where your company will pay for it. So by all means. But if you want to do a full-time program where you got to bow out of the workforce for 2 years, then your opportunity cost gets higher each year. So that's the argument that he made.
That's fine. Then set higher goals. I mean, everything requires sacrifice. I walked away from a very good job and took on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And I did it because I was comfortable with the calculation that I did, like your little charts. I mean, I knew what to, I had my experience. I saw what I wanted. I saw what it would take to get that. I went and got that. And because I knew that when I came out the other end, I'd be able to get this. And that's the thing. If people aren't doing those calculations, if they're not going through this thought process and their response to that is, well, I'm not going to do it down the road. That's on them. That's their decision. That doesn't make it the optimal decision in general, right? Everybody's got their personal decisions, and you have to deal with that. But I'm not saying he's wrong. I think it's an individual decision, and you have to weigh those pros and cons and what is your risk tolerance.
Well, so that's something that like I've never seen anyone put together like a financial model like this. Like I wish that someone would have talked to me and laid it out like this when I was deciding to go get my MBA. You know, what's funny is that I worked 3 years and then went back. So it sounds like we have somewhat of a similar career trajectory, although I never worked for a company after I got my MBA. I went directly into entrepreneurship. Yeah. So I just like that I'm putting on my own analytics hat to solve my own problem. Like trying to express this to my coaching clients is so abstract, but for them to see that. And I mean, also too, I just wanted to loop in the conversations that I'm having with people. So, I mean, I think this education multiplier is pretty interesting. So let's say it only increases the trajectory by 10%. I mean, we can play around with it. And I love how interactive this is. So let's say, because I heard it was anywhere from a 3 to a 5% average. So now that switches the model around. But I think getting in and playing with these hard numbers, you're right. I think it makes it so much like you're doing the math. I don't think a lot of people make these huge life decisions based on data. It's just they get sold.
And they should, especially if you're wanting to do a career in analytics. You should be analyzing your own personal decisions. You should make fact-based decisions or data-based decisions if you can in your own life efforts.
Right, but I didn't have the nuanced analytics mind that I have now back 5 years ago when I was applying for my MBA. So I think that's the struggle. It's like I knew that. Well, I will say this: that deciding to get an MBA with a concentration in analytics, that was the first time that I think I made a calculated risk. I had just kind of gone off of whatever. I was just kind of being tossed around, you know, up until that point of like whoever would come along. Like I got my undergrad in economics because I liked the professor I had. That was the level of of thought process for me making my decisions pre-25. And you know what? I mean, that makes total sense because what is it? Your prefrontal lobe isn't even developed until 25, right? So
Sure.
I was basically a child making decisions that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But all right, let's get back to our audience here. I feel okay. I'm starting to get into a rhythm here. It's awkward with the slideshow, and then also moderating the chat here.
So I have another question from ZZZ Key.
Okay.
So this person has their master's. They got it 3 years ago, and they were saying that they're searching for an analytics position, and half of the hiring managers are saying that this person overqualifies. The other half is saying that they underqualify, and so they were hoping that they could get some advice on how to navigate this because they've already had their master's. They've already got their master's at this point. So.
Yeah. So how do you have any thoughts on that, Matty B?
Yeah, without being in the conversation with the prospective hiring manager, it's hard to really know if they're just coming up with an excuse or if they actually, maybe it's a negotiation tactic on their side. Like, I hate to hear people being that coy. I would be much more direct. I have been more direct with candidates in the past where they, on paper, are overqualified. And I say, so, obviously you're overqualified. Give me a sense for, why this is important to you and why should I believe that you're not just using this as a stepping stone, having those hard conversations up front. So from the applicant perspective, I think it's framing that conversation very clearly and being honest, like, this is what this role means to me. And I understand that I have education that is beyond what's required, but the experience is what's interesting to me. And maybe you don't have roles for me in the future, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. What I'm interested in right now is this position, and here's why. If you haven't sold them on why you're the right person to fill that role and why they should be comfortable taking someone like you who's overqualified on, then they're going to continue to make those sorts of decisions because they see you as either a flight risk, they don't have the budget, which is something you're going to have to figure out on your own as well, right? This goes back to the whole being very calculated about this. If you go through, you have a target, we're going to get to these surveys with all the salary information. If you have a target role, geographically what companies are paying, then you can do that calculation and say, does it make sense for me to go after this, yes or no? And then you've got a plan and you're not finding yourself in this situation where you're overqualified, you're going to get underpaid. It sucks, but a lot of people are dealing with that. So I would just say being honest up front. If you're overqualified, just say that and sell them on why it's the right role for you and that it's still important to you.
Okay. I have thoughts on this. So the last semester of my MBA program, I took an internship that was designed for an undergrad, like maybe a sophomore. It was design charts to do line reviews for this manufacturing company. What I did was I showed up to that interview with an alternate proposal, and I said, hey, listen, I'm an MBA student. I'm about to graduate. I'd like to start my consulting agency. What I can do is create an automated system that can scale to all 17 of your assortments. I started with that lower salary, and this is kind of back to that point of like, getting underpaid is demoralizing because the employer is saying, hey, look, I just don't appreciate you. Like I don't see that you're worth X amount of dollars. Like you're just not the market going rate. And that crushed me. It took me, so I'll be completely like cards on the table here. I started out consulting at $30 an hour, and it took me 3 months to negotiate from 30 to 32. So I feel like borderline embarrassed about that. But I mean, I've come so far since then. But what's interesting is that I kind of whittled along, slowly increased my hourly rate, but I was getting wins for this organization to about a year and a half later, I was charging $175 an hour for my time. But what you have to do is it's really hard to start from that because you've got an anchor point at a really low position, a really low market value. What you may want to do is take that job, knock it out of the park, get some really good stories out of it. Like how I could say I built an analytics infrastructure for a $132 million company. I mean, the next CFO that I talk to, I don't need to say, oh, by the way, I only got paid $30 an hour. So you don't have to bring that baggage with you if you're, and Matt, I know this is a little bit of a controversial take, jumping from one organization to another, but sometimes a clean start can kind of wipe away that baggage.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm inherently a loyal person, but all it takes is a couple of acts of disloyalty in the other direction, and suddenly it's like, nah, man, this is every man for themselves. Unfortunately, that's just the real world, right? You have to look out for yourself and your best interest, and along with that goes, you're talking about being underpaid. I would say I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here and say that the biggest frustration that I see in particularly young professionals, but this affects a lot of people, is being handcuffed to a salary. And what I mean by that is you get people who get comfortable, but they freaking hate their job. They are miserable, but they know that they're getting paid at a level that they're not going to get somewhere else. And the problem with this is, that's your life. That is your well-being. That is all of these things. And if you're unhappy, then you're probably not going to grow within that organization, and they don't care about you, and they're going to drop you as soon as they can drop you. It's just the way that it is. I have personally taken 75% pay cut for an opportunity because I saw the potential in that role, and I saw that, life could improve. And you do that, you're happier, you're producing better, and next thing you know, you're up and above where you started. Right? So the right company, the right opportunity, we need to be less reliant on these companies that just hold our hands cuffed, and more free will about, no, this is what I'm worth. I'm willing to take a sacrifice. It's all about having goals. If you don't have goals or objectives or things that you're trying to pursue, you're always going to be at the mercy of these organizations and whatever they have available. But if you see potential, if you have goals, then freaking go chase them. And then you're going to get paid what you're worth eventually. Right. And if you're not, next, figure it out.
That takes such strong mental fortitude. And something I wanted to touch on, getting back to that debate with Dr. Hall's point on education, you have a little bit of survivorship bias. Like, it worked out for you. So it's like a little easy to look back and say, oh yeah, that path, to where I'm trying to put myself in the position of these people I'm coaching of they have no idea what it's going to look like. That is such a mental, one, I guess, piece of advice I have is surround yourself with people who are in the analytics space that ideally they're where you want to be. So you can see that and you can model that behavior. But if you're working remote and you have no friends in this space and you're not having conversations about kind of the human contact with people in this industry, that's a huge challenge. And I'm starting to see that as I'm having more conversation with people trying to make this transition.
Yeah. No, I want to acknowledge you're absolutely right. There is a bias in my feedback, and that is the survivorship, right? I have been fortunate. I think that the cards, if I go back and talk about how bizarre my goals were when I got my undergrad degree, and as I was planning to move to Spain and do my MBA and move to Texas and get work experience, and then move back to California when I was ready to start a family, and then looking back going, oh my gosh, that all worked out exactly the way that I planned. It's a little bit insane, but it was because I was so focused on what it was that I wanted. I literally had charts like what you're showing, okay, if I stay here, this is what my future looks like. If I pursue these things, this is what it could look like. Yeah, I want that. I'm going to do everything in my power to get that. And being selective, being confident, seeing past just the surface. I don't disagree that I have that bias, and that it could have not worked out in any one of those steps. In fact, I could argue that it didn't work out, because I'm not telling you about the 70 jobs I was rejected from during my master's program. All it took was the one, right? I was graduating in 2009. There was something big in the world happening in 2009. There were companies that I was going to intern with that went kaput. They don't exist anymore. Bear Stearns. So there's a lot of stuff that it's going to happen no matter what. You're going to interact. You're going to hit walls. You're going to hit disagreement. Things are not going to go exactly to plan, but it's on you to stay the course.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's kind of one of the themes that I'm trying to get out with this lecture. And well, honestly, I'm trying to get more reps in with like doing lectures and live streams, because this is challenging. But I want you guys who are watching this to be able to see it. This is what the next 10 years of your life could look like. You know, you could be making, I mean, I've got the model pulled up right here. I mean, this could be you right here. You could be making $143,000 a year. So, and just, there are going to be pitfalls and you're going to be overwhelmed, but just stay the course. Like it's definitely not easy, but also, all right, let's keep ourselves honest here. So Matty B, this is what you said, you use kind of as benchmarking for salaries, which I think people are probably really interested in, so we've got this one, which is, I think it's Robert Half. And then we have Harnum, which is an analytics recruiting agency. So these numbers are different. And I think they're coming from just different roles. I think this one's a little bit more financial analysis based, right?
That's kind of the root of it. So Robert Half, I mean, they're massive. They place a lot of people. Okay. They're all over the place. And I don't know if they actually started doing accounting and then finance or what, but that's sort of been their base. But as analytics has grown up and taken on, a very solid position in a lot of these companies, they have started to implement these different analytical roles like treasury analyst, business analyst, data analyst. You've got, I think on the next page, there's like business intelligence, business systems, financial project management, financial systems, and on and on and on. So they've got a lot of these more technical roles that are not proper finance necessarily, but they may report up through that structure. So it's a natural extension of what Robert Half does. And the way that they've got these things set up is they have the starting salary. They've got these tiered by title and your natural progression, how you might advance. And they've got them, at the 25th percentile, 50th, 75th. You can kind of think of that as like adjustment for company size, company resources. There's even a metric somewhere in this document that shows you, based on your city in particular, how you should correct these numbers, because there's going to be a high or low cost of living adjustment. I have found these numbers to be pretty accurate as it relates to, offers I've seen around, offers that we've made. It's one of those benchmarking guides that we use. There's a lot of them out there that are available. But yeah, I don't know if there's something specific we want to look at in here, but it's really important to use these types of guides so that you understand and you can do that planning for yourself.
Well, I just want to kind of like take a look at the model here that we created. So, I mean, this looks pretty close. I mean, actually, this one's pretty conservative. I mean, well, okay, once it goes up to, all right, it looks like this.
That's a big pop there.
Right. So maybe I don't know what happened. That was a 35. Yeah. I don't know why that.
It looks like it multiplies off of the adjustment for education.
Okay. So maybe that's 1.25%. There we go.
Yeah. I would say, depending on, this is just, again, somewhat anecdotal, but also based on observations in these types of guides. But if you're going from an entry level to a senior, you're probably going to see a 7 to 15% increase. Manager, 10 to 15%. Director, probably 20%. It all depends. And then not only that, these are just base salaries. Another thing, total comp is a topic that I think people should better understand, and that is, a lot of times you've got these FANG jobs and they're quoting these obnoxious payments that people get, but it's including salaries, bonuses, RISUs, unit stock options, and other things in that number. So it looks crazy because people think about it in terms of just base salary, but it's a lot of different things because comp comes in different ways. So these right here are going to be salaries alone. Okay. You add on to that, if you're a regular employee, you might be getting a 5 to 10% bonus, potentially, if your company performs. At a manager level, it could be 10 to 15, director sometimes 20% and above, VPs 50%. It really depends, but bonuses can be substantial. Stock options can be substantial. There's a lot of other things to consider than just base salaries.
Okay, since Abe's in the chat, let's take a look at financial analysts. So Abe, is this looking pretty good to you? Let us know in the chat. So this is actually a lot lower than I thought. I didn't think financial analysts would be starting at 53. I thought, well, I guess, okay. What's interesting is that my exposure to financial analysts are those who are exactly what we talked about earlier. Those people who have an MBA but have very little experience. So for my MBA cohort, it was actually split about 50-50. So half of the students were like myself, who worked 3 to 5 or 7 years, and then half the students went directly to from undergrad to grad school.
Yeah.
But so I think most of the financial analysts in my cohort started around the $75,000 mark.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is showing up to 1 year. So that first job you come out, I would expect between 55 and 65. And then once it does go up pretty quick. Like by third year, you should be maybe in the 80s potentially. And then by senior, it really depends on if you've carved out a niche for yourself, but 85 and up is not abnormal for a senior. And yeah, these all look pretty reasonable for a salary to me.
All right, so we got Abe chiming in here. Get up your goals, man. You hit 53.
And again, this is why I wanted to start the whole thing off by saying all of this needs to be taken into absolute consideration. So if you're look, it's 25th percentile, so it's lower on the rung. But then if you go to the appendix and find the specific geography, there could be a cost of living adjustment that might actually make it in the 50th percentile. It's hard to know. There's so many contingencies that go into salaries. It's kind of a science in itself.
Okay, so it sounds like, okay, so he's working for his college.
Yeah, and those types of institutions are going to be in the 25th percentile, just straight up.
Right. So, Abe, if money is the value or the priority here, I feel like guilty saying like just kill it where you're at and then leverage that into a much higher paying salary in a different industry. It's the same skill set, and you can take those skills and pivot. All right, so now let's check out Harnum, which this is a much different report. So this one is, so Robert Half was like the financial services, right? And then there's a little bit of analytics kind of sprinkled in. This company does analytics recruiting, and I was actually, they reached out to me, I think 3 or 4 years ago when I was I identified professionally as a data visualization specialist or a Tableau specialist. So there's a whole lot going on here. So what you guys can do is just Google Harnum salary guide if you want to go through line by line, because there is a ton of information. So they break it down into different sectors. So we've got data and technology. And yeah, Matt, these look so much higher. And I think that you're right. It's probably because it's based out of the major metros.
It could be, depending on where and who they're recruiting for. So if they've got a stronghold in FANG organizations, and so they're recruiting into Silicon Valley or somewhere like New York or wherever, yeah, they're gonna be higher. They have to be higher if they want to be competitive. And then dealing with a recruiter is their kind of their job to get the maximum that makes every party happy. So they're gonna reflect things that are attractive and make people want to work with them to get recruitment opportunities.
See, it's interesting because they even do consulting rates too, which this feels really low to me. Like 175 for someone who is the VP of an analytics company. Maybe I just found a niche where I'm working directly with executives with much smaller organizations. So it's there's just lower hanging juicy fruit. So I could find a $350,000 insight, and it's not really, it's because I can sell and I can get in and I've got the network to meet these executives. But okay, let's take a look at the difference here. So for business intelligence, they're looking at 75 to 90,000. Let's see, that's up here, right? Am I?
Next, I think it's 2 pages down or 3 pages now.
Oh,
It was on 18.
here we go.
There you go.
Okay, so 85 to 40. Yeah, that is really interesting. So what do you make of that? Like, it's just, I mean, is the cost of living that different?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I consider myself fortunate that I live in one of the lowest cost of living areas in California, but we have some large organizations that do business here. And so we get pretty competitive salaries sometimes. But it is absolutely not. If I were in Silicon Valley, I would expect to make probably 3 times what I make now. But cost of living is 4 to 5 times higher, right? So it's outrageous. But so you're looking, basically that starting rate is in the tier there, between your 75 and 80 or 75 to 100% range. So I mean, it does make sense. It is somewhat aligned. It's just at the higher end of the tier schedule.
Well, this is interesting because I thought there would be more of a divergent between data science and business intelligence in terms of pay. So have you managed both data scientists and analysts?
I have not been directly over data scientists. No, I've worked side by side with them.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just going to say I've always been privy to compensation though, so I'm aware of what is typical. So
okay, see, this is I took a look at this stuff before we got on air. This was bad. This was really surprising to me how low paying digital analytics is.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I know what that means, but
hold on, let's see.
Is that
digital analytics? Okay, so it's looking at like UI, UX. So I guess it's the analytics of design. Guys in the chat, if you guys are doing digital analytics, let us know. So, because I think digital analytics and web analytics are different. Maybe not. Okay, so interesting. Now, digital marketing. Wow, I would expect that to be so much higher.
Yeah, I don't know what really.
Okay, web analytics is down here. Okay.
For entry level, I mean, none of that really shocks me. Again, it's going to be a function of how they gathered this information, where they place these people. If those are the only types of roles that they're hiring out in, some location, it just, I don't know.
Okay.
I will say that the titles here are all a little bit weird to me. I feel like I should be more familiar with these, but they don't make sense.
Iris, I totally agree with you. I don't know why that's getting paid so low. But I mean, so this is a survey, I think, of the people who they have placed. So this is, I mean, we talked about bias earlier. This is a biased data source. Yeah. So maybe they're just the people who are doing digital analytics job. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is a total misread of the situation, but maybe these people know a thing or two about marketing and they don't need a recruiter to find a job.
It could, and it could also just be maybe this is the entry level for a lot of people. So you've got a lot more competition. There's a lot more people who are getting their start here. So what we're seeing here is, that's what companies are willing to pay for first timers that they're taking a chance on. And then as they get up to, you see the mid-level, that's when they start making a little bit more. Although digital marketing continues to flounder, it seems like. So
yeah,
but it is a decent jump from each tier.
Well, it's just so interesting thinking about because I know someone who has a digital marketing agency and they are making a killing compared to these people. But I mean, that's the risk. Talk about uncertainty and risk. Starting your own thing is infinitely more.
Yeah, that's neither here nor there. That's completely. They might hire a digital analyst and pay them that rate to support the organization, right?
True. So Hunter, I feel like we've been neglecting you.
It's all right. It's all right. I've been listening, taking in the content, and enjoying. But yeah, let's talk about.
Oh, so
Let's
it
talk
sounds like
about.
you've got something to share with us, maybe?
Yeah, so I posted a survey in our Discord server on the announcements channel. If you missed that,
Do you want
and
to share it?
yeah, hold on, let me stream that over real quick. Let's see.
Did you hear that, Matt? He's going to stream it over to us. So
Yeah, I'm gonna
Ooh.
stream it over.
Sounds fancy.
yeah, he's gonna show us a Discord. I feel like we're hip to the young kids.
So here's the announcement that I posted last week. It was asking about a data collaboration project so that we could have more engagement in our Discord server as a community. And it seems like overwhelmingly people voted for option A, which is actually the one I was pulling for as well. So this means that every week or so, we're going to have a new data set that we all work on together, and we all come up with different solutions to visualize that data set. It could range from anything from just a data set that we found on Kaggle to something that applies more to a specific field, or even to something that applies to the podcast. I mean, the list is endless. And so the current plan is to for me to work on that data set throughout the week leading up to the day of the collaboration event, which is currently planned to be Friday after this live stream, because that's when we have the most number of people, who are in our network. And so by that time, I will have a rough idea, or I'll have a rough visualization of the data and somewhat what it should look like, and then we can kind of talk through that with the other participants. And then they can come up with their own solutions to it. And they can either base that on what has already been done or come up with new ideas, which we always encourage. So do you have any thoughts on that, guys?
Oh, I love it. I love that approach.
Who was the one person who voted for B? I feel
in order to get people to be able to vote for them, I had to add option B.
Oh, so you were the only one.
I pulled for both sides. I had to. It was the only way.
You had to. So nobody voted for it.
Yeah. Nope. But I'm glad that everybody voted for option A because it's a lot more engaging in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel that.
I feel like this is a great example of how you get biased data.
Possibly.
So do you want this shiny, amazing thing? Or do you want this, I don't know, this thing over here that no one... You want this, right?
So I see that Iris is actually asking about the link to the Discord. So we checked. The link to the Discord is in the description of this video. It's really here this time. So go check it out down there.
That's funny. I was going to double check right now just to make sure that.
Yeah, it's in the description. Go check down there. You just click on that link and make an account if you don't already have one, and it should bring you right in.
Awesome. And okay. So Hunter, I do have some feedback. I think also too, what we can do is have a specific hashtag on LinkedIn, because that's how we are promoting our course right now. And Abe showed me the analytics from he took the retail sales case study course and then shared it and got a bunch of feedback. I think he got like almost 4,000 people who viewed that. So this is a great way to get. Well, I mean, he also had like people who were hiring managers looking at his content. So he had, this is a little bit biased because him and John Weininger did that mock interview. But I mean, seeing Abe put out that content and then John come in and comment on it, and then they have a conversation on LinkedIn, that's so cool. And I think that's extremely valuable because people like the Johns of the world, by the way, he's the analytics manager for Home Depot. No other people that are like him. So if he is commenting on your stuff, people who are other hiring managers are probably going to see your content as well. So
I'm glad that you clarified John worked for Home Depot, because I thought you were referring to yourself in the third person. I was going to say, I don't think your ego should be quite there yet. I mean, we're getting there, but.
Oh, yes. That's true. I'm glad that I have people to keep me grounded and my feet.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So Hunter, great job. This looks awesome.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
But I love the thinking behind this of building a community and get people to interact, which is cool because I saw Deepak and Abe are the ones who are the super fans that are like pushing through and taking all of our case study courses. It's so funny to watch them comment on each other's iterations of their visualizations and get new ideas. And I just want to emphasize that is a fantastic way to learn. So Matt, I don't know if you probably agree to this. I usually just create a prototype and then I get feedback and then I iterate and then I get feedback and then I iterate to where it takes a village. It's not just me in a back room, like building this mastermind. It's almost like I crowdsource a lot of the work that I do. Yeah.
No, that's the way I think it should be if you want to do it right and get feedback, and you can take a step back and sort of take it all in and better understand that. I think what's super cool about seeing people not criticizing, but offering critical feedback, complimentary feedback of their work. It's like that is sort of in a bottle the essence of what makes a really awesome analytics department, where there's collaboration, there's respect and trust around one analyst to another, going like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think of that? And then giving feedback and then kind of going off of each other. It's not always just like you're in on your own, just doing something and hoping that it turns out to be brilliant. It shouldn't be that way. You should be getting feedback from all directions. And so it's super cool to see it unfolding right there on LinkedIn by people who are in different places, different stages of their career, all that stuff. So I like it.
Awesome. So what have you been up to, Matt? I know that you don't you have like a free course or something that you're putting out?
Yeah. So I've just been busy with my day job, and by night flipping on the camera, trying to make more content for my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Matt Brattin. And I've been experimenting with some shorts, doing some quick Excel tips and things. That's been interesting. I'm almost embarrassed. No, I am embarrassed to admit that I'm on TikTok now. Wow. So I've got a couple of.
Are you an influencer?
Absolutely not. Nobody should ever be influenced by me. But it's I've got a couple of I'm filming Excel shorts for that, and then I'm just pushing it over to Instagram and YouTube shorts. So we'll see how long that experiment lasts. But then, yeah, I'm continuing to get people enrolling and giving really positive feedback to my free mini course on analytics careers. So you can get to that at, we can put a link probably somewhere, but it's tmbanalytics.com/free training. And it's a little over an hour, and it gives you a full overview of what it means to be an analyst. There's probably people in the chat who've gone through the thing. You don't have to take my word for it, but it's a good overview of what to expect. Career.
All right, I'm willing to pin a link to your course in the comments section.
Yeah,
but we need to follow Abe's advice, and you have to give us
show us a dance. Well, I am known around the world for my dance skills. I don't know if you knew that, but no, that's absolutely not true. There are videos floating around of me dancing in the street. So this is a true story, and I'm absolutely going to embarrass myself, but I think life needs more of this. One of my friends who convinced me to get on TikTok, he's explaining it to me. I'm like, dude, I can't hang. This isn't what I do. And I said, but if there was something I would do that is incredibly embarrassing, since I want to focus on Excel stuff for the time being, I was like, let's make up a dance. We'll call it the XL Giddy Up. And so it's like you do some stupid crap like XL, and then you're dancing like this. So there you go, Abe. I just danced for you. That's the extent of what I can do. I'm gonna pull I got my hip replaced card and say I'm not limber enough just yet.
Oh. Well, okay. This is interesting because Shashank Kalanithi is on TikTok, and he said the algorithm is by far the best of any platform.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was bizarre. Like I put my first video on there and I had like 200 views and 30 followers. I was like, what the, like, this doesn't work that way on YouTube. But then it's fleeting, right? So you got to keep feeding the beast is what I'm seeing.
Oh.
So I've kind of been feeding a couple of videos. Like I think I've got 3 or 4 up right now. And I'm going to probably do 10 or 15 and just see if I get any traction from there. And sweet.
Awesome. We got somebody buying in on the Discord.
We got three new joins since
Nice.
this podcast has started. It's slowly coming together.
That's great.
Perfect. So yeah, you gotta leave. So wait, okay. Tell me more about TikTok. So they're what, 30-second videos or a minute and a half or something?
Well, I'll let the young ones.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Well, they're aren't they about a minute normally? I mean, I don't use
Look at him
TikTok either.
pretending to be coy.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
I just do this.
I do not. If you can look at my phone right now. There's no TikTok on there ever.
I would rather not. So it's 1 minute.
We don't know what filters on that photo.
Yeah, all right.
It's 1 minute, but immediately I got notified saying you can upload longer than 1 minute now. So I don't know how all that works. I'm sticking to about 55 seconds, and so we'll see how that goes. Some are shorter, some are barely longer. So I don't know.
All right,
I think, yeah.
So we got a Discord now. We need to get a TikTok, and I expect
brilliance.
I don't have the mind to understand TikTok quite like you do.
I might have to outsource this to my 12-year-old niece. I don't know. She uses it more than I do, to be honest with you.
So here's what kind of put me over was my friend kept sending me these links that I couldn't click on because I refused to download the app. Mm-hmm. And then finally he started sharing with me some of the stuff he was learning, and I was like, there's actual valuable content on there? What? So I signed up and I started doing searches for Excel and analytics, and there's influencers on there that are I'll be frank, I think they're garbage, but there's some people who are sharing Excel tips and doing things, and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers. And I was like, I could do this. This is easy, and it's valuable. It's quick bites. So I'm going to try to stay in my lane and only show what's there. If there's consumption, then great. If there's not, then cool. I'm going to keep working on my YouTube channel. So it's an experiment.
Because I did 2 weeks in a row where I did a short, which is like less than a minute, and it got no views. So I was like, okay, I think. Go ahead, Hunter.
To be fair, if shorts are going to be an ongoing thing, I think if any platform is the right one to do it on, it probably would be TikTok, just because of how rigorous their algorithm is. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's ridiculous. You see people, the recommended section of TikTok goes on and on and on, and people just sit on that for hours. And it's very easy to get your stuff out there.
The average user, I think I just saw, every time they turn on the app, this isn't a daily average, every time they click on the button, they spend over an hour on the app.
I believe it. I believe it.
And it's super addictive. But the caveat with that is, if you're trying to get people to leave TikTok and like send them somewhere, it's going to take a lot of repeated engagement for people to actually click on your profile, find a link, go somewhere else. They're not there to do that. They're there to do this and be entertained. And if you happen to add value and you keep adding value, I think eventually you'll build that reputation. But there's a couple people I've seen who I think are doing really cool stuff where they've done that. They've got hundreds of videos with hundreds of thousands of followers. And then they go live. And then they get a bunch of people jump on. And then during that live, they're actually captive to that person. And that's where they're giving their messaging, like going, hey guys, I'm about to launch this book, or I'm about to do this, or I'm about to do that. So go here now. So once you've got that audience, that's how you capitalize, is you take them out of their normal rhythm of just scrolling. So this is
interesting.
It's definitely important to have value first.
Lead with value.
Yeah, lead with value.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're at almost an hour and 20 minutes. Any closing arguments? Pros and the cons. I feel like we went way off the rails with TikTok, but I don't.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I wish that Dr. Hall was on, because I wish that I could have given a more substantive discussion around that, because he has a valid point there, and I think that it warrants like a legit discussion around, the pros and cons of that, because these are things that people really do need to take consideration to as they're planning their career, right? So it's not one size fits all, but do your homework and make the best decision for you. Like, that's really it. I can't tell you what to do. He can't tell you what to do, but we can tell you what you should be considering too. And get a marketing analyst on here, says Think Mark Think.
Okay, so Mark, I actually have a proposal from Ryan Forrest, who, if you go back to our catalog, he runs a company called Fungi Marketing, which is a stupid pun, but they're also doing a stupid amount of business. So his company has kind of blown up lately, but I think what we're going to do is have him do a quarterly, like he's going to take over our marketing with his organization, and then we're going to do like a quarterly check-in, and I'm just going to live stream that. So Matt, I don't know anyone else doing this in this space of like, here's my website data, here's my sales data, just you can have it. I'm a little bit worried that, like, I don't know, Maven Analytics or Super Data Science is going to try to like come in and like edge me out in my own audience, but I don't know if that's even a risk, because the people who are watching this stream have been following us for a long time, and there's kind of a relationship built up there. Because I think that's the plan is, hey, we're gonna try to be scaling up over the next 2 quarters, and we're gonna be checking in. So, because one of the risks of getting that, like you said about getting a master's degree, is that, okay, what if you study for 6 years, so 4 years of undergrad and 2 years of grad school, and you don't even like it? What we're trying to do is give like these people exposures to what analytics looks like.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay. Well, just I'm having this anxiety of like, I'm doing new things and I can't tell if it's a good idea or if there's a reason no one else is doing that. I don't know if you ever have that struggle.
Oh, absolutely. And it's good to hear that you're mortal and you also have anxieties around your crazy decisions. So no, if you're talking specifically about releasing your information into the wild, I think that the reason you're not seeing a lot of people doing it is because by the time you're big enough where that would be a disadvantage, they're not going to do it. But I think at your stage, it's early on, you can afford the risk of sharing your information and getting feedback. So it makes sense. I think it's super cool. And I don't know that I've seen anybody do that either. I also know that as you continue to grow, you'll probably be a little bit more protective of the information. But at the same time, how could somebody capitalize on that? I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but that I think you're in a position to just, do your thing. See where it goes.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I will take your advice. All right. So what's the best way for people? Oh, by the way, I don't think I congratulated on this. You just hit 800 subscribers on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Yesterday. That was cool.
So everyone that's on the chat right now, go subscribe to Matt Brattin's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity as always. Hunter, I don't know that you've been on with me at the same time, so it's good to have the opportunity to look at you and interact directly.
Here I am.
And I'm not harassed, just sitting. I actually thought this was going to be an intervention and you guys were going to tell me to shut up in the chat.
Yeah, that's what we do. We cancel other beta tubers. Awesome. Good. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we are going to bring this podcast to a close. I'll see you guys later.